The other thing I would tell myself is to be patient, because in my case anyway, I had to be patient. Patience and persistence, because I could have given up earlier. And sometimes I thought about it, right? Like when you get
Mhm.
rejected and rejected and rejected, you're like, what am I even doing? Wasting every free moment I have writing and it's doing nothing. So persistence, that would be my best advice.
Welcome to Raising Baby Authors. I'm Cassia, your host, and a brand new writer. If you feel overwhelmed and lost about this whole writing thing, you're certainly not alone. Join me while I pester my author guests for writing advice and find out how they do it. Because if they could, then why not you? It truly takes a village to raise an author, so let me share my village with you. Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to the classroom. Thank you so much for giving me your time and attention. And I am so excited to introduce you to our new mentor today. It's author Lindsay Lovise. Lindsay writes historical and paranormal romances with brave heroines, along with the occasional creepy YA. When she's not writing, Lindsay's reading, drinking coffee, and avoiding laundry. Although she lives in New York, she was born and raised in Maine, where the winters make for perfect reading weather. Hi, Lindsay. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining. After I've read your books, you were like my wish list authors. I really,
Oh,
really want to have her on my podcast. I'm really very flattered that you agreed. Thank you so much.
thank you so much for asking me. That's really nice.
Yeah, for any listener out there, Lindsay's books are amazing. You have two books out so far, or something else?
Yes, I have two out so far, and then my third one is coming out tomorrow.
Oh, yes, yes, we're recording it before, but when you are listening to it, the next book in what's the series name?
Yes, it's called The Secret Society of Governess Spies. It's a lot of S's in there.
Yeah, I read the first one called Never Blow a Kiss, and it's my first book that I've read from you, and really kind of blew me away. Actually, my friend recommended it to me.
Oh,
So
wow.
thanks to her. Yeah, she posted. I think she posted a review today. Her name's Brittany. Judging by the cover, I think her handle is.
Yes. Oh my gosh, she has been so nice to me. She's messaged me some really great things.
Yeah, yeah. I usually she recommends stuff to me, and I take it very seriously because she has very good taste.
Yeah, she
Okay.
seems very nice.
All right. So, well, let's start. Traditional question for any author. Tell me about your background. Have you always been writing?
Sure. Yeah, I have always been writing ever since I was younger. I would go to the grocery store with my dad. He did the grocery shopping, and I would beg to buy like 5-star notebooks. That was my thing. And then I would write some pretty bad stories in those notebooks. And I just always knew that I wanted to be a writer. And so I continued writing. It took me a long time to find an agent. When I did, things started happening from there. I published Never Blow a Kiss was my debut novel in January. And yeah, it's been amazing.
Wow. Is this the novel that found you the agent, or?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And what's funny is when I wrote it, I at that point I had honestly been rejected quite a bit at that point. And I wrote it and I just kind of put it aside because I was like, well, what's the point? No one's going to want this. And then like a few months later, I pulled it out and submitted it. And that was the book that got me my agent. Yeah.
Wow. And how many manuscripts have you written before that book? Like the ones that you were planning to publish?
I think I wrote 8 full manuscripts before I wrote Never Blow a Kiss.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it was the ninth one.
Because you
Yeah.
always think that when someone's debut is their debut, but it's only because it's published, right? So you practically it's your ninth book.
I think, for some people it really is like the first book they wrote, but I think I would hazard a guess that for a lot of people it's maybe number 3 or number 4 or, in my case, number
Mhm.
9. Because it's definitely a craft that takes honing, right? Like my first book that I wrote probably should die a quiet, dark death in my desk and never be seen, because it takes a while to
Wow. And I mean, have you ever considered like self-publishing anything?
Yeah, I have. And I think that, I mean, I have considered it. I think that hybrid publishing, right? Like a little bit of traditional publishing, a little bit of self-publishing might be the best of both worlds, you know? So I
Hmm.
think the cool thing about self-publishing is that you see a lot of things that you might not see traditional publishing taking a chance on. So I think that's the fun thing about indie publishing.
But you eventually persevered and just like went the traditional route because that was your dream?
That was my dream. Yeah, yeah. And both things are totally amazing, whatever someone, because some people want nothing to do with traditional publishing. For me, that was my dream. And so that's what I, stuck to. Yeah.
Are you ever planning to revive one or two of those eight manuscripts and publish them eventually?
I don't have any plans to do that, but I don't know. It's an idea, right? They're just sitting there. So maybe someday. I have a lot of other ideas and things that I'm writing. So maybe someday.
Okay, I mean, I usually ask about first drafts and stuff like that, but you did mention that you were writing like one manuscript after the other, and eventually you were learning. Were you doing like any how to say this classes, creative writings degree or things like that? Things that you would use for learning the craft besides just writing.
No, I didn't take any creative writing classes or anything like that. I think for the best thing you can do if you're a writer is to read and read widely because the you learn about like plot and story structure. It's osmosis, right? Like you kind of just absorb it as you are reading. And will say though, I wrote like an article for Writer's Digest about 4 things I would have done differently when I was querying if I had to do it all over again. And one of them would have been though to go to conferences and meet other romance authors and kind of develop that community. And I really think that that would have been helpful. And maybe it wouldn't have taken me so long to find an agent if I had done something like that.
So you did not have a critic partner when you were writing those previous ones?
No, I didn't. And maybe, looking back, maybe these are things that would have been, a little beneficial to me instead of kind of struggling in my silo like by myself. So, if anyone is listening to this who is writing and is kind of in a similar spot, I would recommend that, finding that
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I haven't published anything yet, but I kind of, when I found an opportunity to find some just writers, not even romance writers, just like writers who just want to write and be accountable and talk about writing, I jumped on that very, very fast because,
That was
yeah.
smart of you. That I think is huge, a huge part of because writing really is so solitary. And so having those people to kind of like come back, like now I'm sort of building up a community with like a debut group and like other historical romance authors. And like it's invaluable, right? Having other people who understand what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And so you say your best tool of learning how to write is reading. So who are you reading in which genres, and who are your author heroes?
I read across genres. I think my favorite is romance. I read mostly romance, but I'll read almost anything. But I just finished Quicksilver, actually, by Callie Hart. That is a romantasy. I think it's coming out soon or came out already.
I think it came out. Yeah.
Did it come out? And then next up is I think it's called Love and Bloom by Lucy Eden. I just met her at the like a library event, and and that was very cool experience. So that's next up on my list. But yeah, I have a lot of there's so many amazing authors out there. It would be really hard to choose. Like historical romance, I would say Lisa Kleypas, Vanessa Riley, like there's Emily Howard, Amanda Collins. There's so many amazing authors. Tessa Dare. I could just keep going.
Yeah.
Is historical one of your favorite subgenres?
I think, yeah, I started with it and I still come back to it for a comfort read. I really love it more than anything. I really, really wish that I could write it, but I don't think I'm capable.
It's a lot of research, and I feel like historical takes a little bit of a beating, I think, in some ways from readers, because there is that, like, some people like things to be exactly historically accurate, and some people are okay with, like, oh, yes, this might have happened then, but I'm writing for a modern audience. And so there's like a lot of different differences on how your historicals come to you. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you are writing like in different genres. So I know so far only the historical authors who kind of just are historians themselves, for example, or just are really, really, really interested exactly in historicals, and so that this whole amount research goes in there. But you are quite like well-rounded author. You like all kinds of stories, and you can write all kinds of stories. So that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have my historical romances. I have three of those that are scheduled to come out. So my second one in the series is February 4th, and then a third one in the winter of 2026. But then I also have my paranormal romance and a young adult book coming out this summer. So
Oh
it's
yeah,
fun.
yeah. There's also young adult. How fun. Okay, so then let's talk about the process of writing. First of all, do you plot or do you pants?
I'm a pantser. So I like to tell myself the story. That is basically the whole reason I write, is because I want to find out what happens. Like, I want to tell myself the story. So I generally start with an idea and then I just plunge in and write. And I think I could be wrong, but this is how I think it is. If you're a pantser, like, yay, woo, you go off and you have fun and you write, but you pay for it in revisions, because then you go back and you're like, oh no, like, I need to fix this, and this. And so I suspect plotters have more work on the front end and have less revisions. That would be what I would think. Are you a pantser or a plotter? Because you said that you like to write.
I'm trying to be a plotter. I'm not sure yet because I only have one finished first draft, which was very loosely plotted. So the rest I was just like telling myself. But the current one that I'm writing, I'm trying to plot like seriously. I wrote a draft zero, which is like basically me just 20 something thousand words of this happened and then that happened and then he said this and then he said that. So this kinds of like I'm trying to be super, super strict about it so that I don't have to edit too much. I'm trying to save time, but I'm not sure that's gonna work.
Hey, different things work for different people. It's amazing. Like when I was at the library thing with Lucy Eden and Celestine Martin, and they're both plotters. Like they have like the color coding and the index cards, and it's beautiful. And I think, I mean, I'm a little bit jealous. I think it's plotters are amazing. So
I am actually surprised that you are a pantser because I thought I could tell when I'm reading a book whether or not whether the author is a plotter or a pantser, because if for me the structure of the book is very clear, then I think in that case the author is a plotter because I can say for sure like it follows kind of maybe a specific formula, plot structure, at least the three acts and stuff like that. But when I don't really feel it this much, then I say it's a pantser. So I thought you were a plotter.
oh, well, I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's basically for me whether I can use a book as a learning material or not
Oh,
for
wow.
structure and for other
Great.
things. And yours I could definitely use because I can see clearly when and what happens and for what reason, and like it flows very nicely. I was sure that you are plotting.
Oh, thank you. You know what? You're not the only one who said that to me. Actually, my editor for another book was surprised to find out that I'm a pantser. So that was nice to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you have this like intuition for structure, probably because of all the reading.
That's what I think. You just, like, when you read enough, you like absorb the natural flow of a story, kind of, and it just becomes like a rhythm that you are able to,
Yeah,
spill your words into.
yeah, I think so. Okay. So then when it comes to the first draft, like how bad do you allow yourself to be?
Bad. Yeah, that's a great question. So you want your words to be good, right? But also like sometimes I don't want to get stuck revising the same paragraph over and over. So I always tell myself it's okay. This can be what do they call it when I was in school? A sloppy draft or something like so you can just let it be bad. And that's what I do because because I'm more of a pantser, I'm still learning my characters. I'm still learning their motivations and their desires and where things are going. And so sometimes things get messy, but you, I don't know what author said it, but one author said, you can't edit a blank page. And I always think of that. Like, you can fix a story that's already been written, but you can't do anything with a blank page.
Right.
So I let myself get pretty messy.
And how does the process look after that? Do you do many self edits and then maybe like other stages in editing? Well, you're in traditional, so it should be a little bit different for the comparing to the mostly indie authors that I'm interviewing. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So the way I work is
No, it's
I'm
okay.
very like boring, straightforward. Like I open a Word doc and I write in a linear fashion straight through. And then I go back when I'm done and that is when I do my goal GMC, your internal, external goal, motivation, and conflict. Have you had authors talk about this before?
Not exactly this aspect. So yeah, that should be very useful.
So then that's when like I will go back and look at my characters and say, do they have these internal and external goals? What's their goal there? External goal, what everyone thinks they want. What is their motivation that everyone thinks is driving them? And what is the conflict? But then every character also has that internal piece, right? Like I might think this guy is a playboy and his goal is to get with as many partners as possible. But maybe internally, his goal is to be accepted by someone or to find love or whatever. And so that's when I kind of go through my characters and make sure they have this internal external GMC. And that's when I go through and clean up my language. I clean up my plot. I clean up my consistencies, my inconsistencies. And then I typically send it to my agent or usually my agent first and then my editor. And then they'll come back with like, oh, well, what about this and this and this? And, developmental edits are just essential for at least for me. Like they hone in on the pieces that aren't quite working, that I can't see because I'm so close to the manuscript. And then it goes from there. That's the process that I do anyway.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I think I mean in terms of indie, I always ask like about the do you do developmental? Do you have beta readers and stuff like that? But I think in traditional, it's more or less like fixed. So you have your editor, they do the work for you. That sounds like a dream actually. That might be worth, that might be worth going the traditional route and spending years and years finding an agent.
No, I agree though, because I think, so in traditional, it generally goes developmental edits with your editor, then you have copy edits, and then you have a proofreader for most imprints. That is the flow once you've turned in your manuscript. And yeah, I mean, is definitely incredibly helpful to have other eyes, professional eyes on your manuscript. Like developmental edits, I think are key for the bones of the story, but then copy edits are like, oh man, they catch all the inconsistencies, and they make you feel dumb because you're like, wow, I don't know how to hyphen, or wow, I don't like, yeah, some of the mistakes, I'm like, this is embarrassing. So it's definitely like super important, I think. Or I should say, I'm just like really grateful for it.
Okay. So what I was gonna ask is whether writing is currently your full-time job.
Yes, sort of. I'm a stay-at-home mom. So I have young children that I take care of. And then
That just leads me to your writing routine. Like, do you write every day? How often, how many, no, not how many words, but like just what is your process?
I do try to write every day. Before I was published, I was working full time and I had kids. And so a lot of my writing, and a lot of my writing still is done in small pieces of time. So I used to write in my car on my lunch or like for 15 minutes before I had to go to work, or I would get up an hour early and write before the kids got up. And now I'm still kind of stealing some time throughout the day, but also, no, really. I'll get like maybe like half an hour here or an hour there. And so I used to worry about that because there is this concept of flow that, says you need to really take 20 minutes to get into your art, and then you kind of enter this state of like not even being conscious of what you're doing anymore. It's like where art comes from. And so I used to feel like, oh my god, like I'm never going to get into flow because I'm interrupted like every 3 minutes. But someone else said like, you train yourself to like dive and concentrate deeply in small amounts of time if that's what you have. And so that's what I do. So I can't say I have like I write from this time to this time, because I don't. I write when I can. I've never counted words. I don't write to a word count. I just get done what I can.
So you would, with a traditional contract, are deadlines at all like pressing, or you can more or less like decide your own time?
I do have written into my contract when drafts are due. That hasn't been a problem for me yet because they're pretty far out. So I have had a year in between, and for me, I can complete a book in that amount of time. So I think like the deadlines for developmental edits and copy edits are a little bit more stressful, because I always think like, oh, I'm not gonna. You get around like 2 weeks. And I always think like, oh, I don't have that much to change, and then I need like every last second. So that's like maybe a little bit more stressful. But for initial drafts so far, I haven't had any deadline stress.
It's nice to hear that you can actually focus in a 15-minute time. I so far found it to be impossible completely.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different, right?
If I have 2 hours to write, I will probably write maybe one of them, probably. The rest is going to be wasted. But yeah, I guess if you don't have time, you need to find time.
Yeah, I waste plenty of time too. Like, don't get me wrong. I definitely like am like scrolling Instagram when I should be writing sometimes. So yeah, we're only human.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. I have the podcast so that people can relate. That's why I ask about more like the, nitty-gritty and the bad things and things like that, so that people can find some common ground with the authors who already did it and who are doing it consistently. So yeah, mostly I try to find validation for myself. So
And I think like it is good because most people have full-time jobs. Like when I was writing, I had a full-time job, and you feel like, when am I going to be able to get this done? Like I can't just sit down and write from 9 to 5. And it can be stressful. There's another author, I mentioned her, Celestine Martin. She used to write out her story ideas on index cards on the train on the way into work, and so I think that stealing moments of time, if you can concentrate, and giving yourself permission to let it all be crappy, is really the only way to move forward, because otherwise, you're not moving forward. If I had tried to wait for a 9 to 5, I'd still be waiting, to have that big stretch of uninterrupted time.
yeah, yeah, that's great advice. Okay, let me see. What else can I ask you? Well, do you ever get writer's block, and how do you deal?
I don't think I get writer's block. Sometimes I might feel a little burned out. And then I say, like, I'm going to take like a week off and just do whatever, like binge watch Netflix and whatever. Sometimes I feel stalled and I just write. So, and I know that sounds dumb, but like I say to myself, like, it's okay if this is boring and stupid and crappy, because at least maybe I can push through to a part that isn't, and then I can come back and revise this section. That's, I think, maybe I deal more with stalls than blocks.
Okay, yeah, it's a great advice to give yourself just permission to write through whatever, and then you can come back and always fix it. I think the other important question for anybody who's just trying to do it is, do published authors have imposter syndrome still?
Absolutely. Um, yeah. So I've had 2 books published now, and I still feel like, why is she asking to interview me? Like, not like a real author. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of reasons for it. First of all, like in my case, I spent a lot of time being rejected. So I feel like I was beaten down to the point where I'm like, but should this book be published? And so not quite there yet. And then, when you come out with a cohort of other incredible authors, like the other 2024 authors, and you see, some people hitting like really great success, and I'm super happy for them. It does make you question though. Like, do I belong? Is my writing good enough? Things like that. And then there's reviews, which in the beginning of my first book, I would like peek at reviews, and now I don't, unless someone tags me. If someone tags me, then I'll look. Please don't tag me in 1 stars, anyone.
Did that
uh,
happen?
no, thank God it has not happened to me. People have been really nice. If they hate my book, they generally don't tag me. Some other people, as some other authors, I think do have to deal with that. But I think not looking at reviews is really helpful for my ego, I think, because along with like the incredible reviews, there's inevitably going to be people that don't like your book. And if you are a people pleaser like I am, that doesn't feel good. So I just leave reader spaces to readers and focus on my writing. And that helps a little with that imposter syndrome, I think.
I think the majority of authors I had so far were telling me, please, please don't read your own reviews. There were some though who said that they do read their own reviews, and if they find something bad, they try to like learn from it. I mean, unless it's like your book is crap, then what can you learn from that?
Gee, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, but if it's some criticism, then they try
Right.
to like if it hits, they can learn from it. But I think you need to have a certain personality and kind of thick skin in order to actually, or you need to do it for such a long time that it doesn't bother you anymore.
Right. If anything will give you a thick skin, I think it's the publishing industry because um yeah, there if you put a book out there and people read it, there are going to be people who love it and there are going to be people who don't. And that's just that. That's the way it is. And I had to get used to that.
Okay. So if we talk about like the further process, so between these, no, sorry, between the like edits, final edits, and then the release, is your publisher taking all the responsibility for like advertising, promos, and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think in traditional publishing, that is generally the publisher. The expectation is that the publisher is going to do the promoting. They send it to the trade journals for reviews. They put it on NetGalley for early reviews. They send out, ARCs and things like that. And so most of the bigger things are taken on by the publisher. And that's great because I am not very good at marketing. It's not my strength and it's not what I enjoy. So some people, especially I think some indies are just really incredible at marketing and writing. Like they just have that talent across the board. And I actually know another traditional author, traditionally published, who does take a lot of marketing on herself and she does amazing work. She really gets her book out there and it's just not my strength. I think traditionally though that is the expectation is that the publisher will take on that load.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if
And
publishers would agree with me, but that's what we think they're doing.
that's what I've heard as well. I'm just wondering, like, if you see the way they do it, for example, and you think it's not enough or you don't like it or something, do you have any control over anything?
You can hire outside publicity. And I did do that for Never Blow a Kiss to give it a little extra boost, maybe reach people that like they work with your publisher so that the publisher can be like, well, we're going to send to these people. And they'd be like, all right, well, we have these people and we're going to send them some stuff on this side. For the most part, though, in my experience, it's really out of my hands for the most part.
Okay. This is new. Like, I didn't know when you're traditionally published, you can actually outsource some of the stuff for publicity. And, like, I mean, but I think that the publisher needs to agree with that or something.
Yeah, so when I did it, I hired a K Publicity and they reached out to my publisher and worked with them in tandem. And so they worked together to kind of promote the book.
Ah, okay. I see. Let's continue then to some of the writing questions that I actually forgot to ask you. So let's come back to that. I wanted really to ask you about the author voice. Basically, what do you think is an author voice? Do you feel like you found yours after so many manuscripts? And what do you think it is for you?
That's a really good question. I don't know what my voice is, but I can recognize other authors' voices. Some authors I think have very unique voices. Like I could probably recognize their books even if it didn't have their name on it. Like for example, I'm thinking of an indie author. Well, she's indie and trad. She's hybrid. Megan Quinn, for example, I feel like has a very distinctive voice. So I think it's just like I don't know. That is like a really hard question to answer. The personality that they put into their writing, I think maybe is little bit of a reflection of the author, and that comes off as your distinct voice, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think? What is your understanding of it?
I'm not really sure. I was trying not to focus on that while I was writing
Yeah.
because to me that would just I don't know in my very limited experience thinking that this is how I write and I shouldn't change it just would make me lazy because I'm not good at it yet, and just settling for what I currently write and thinking this is my voice is not a good idea. So I just try to try to be good, not imitate anyone, try to be just as good as I think I can be, and then from there maybe think about what is my voice, not like how can I make my voice.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever thought about my voice at all. Like I just am thinking about the characters' voices more than me as an author imposing my own. But I'm sure I have voice that comes through, like because how can you not when you are the author, but I don't know. That's an interesting question. I'm sure there are some very eloquent authors out there who could answer it far better than me. Sorry.
If I was trying to describe yours, so from like the two books that I've read, I would say it's light. So like kind of even the story was not very light, like Never Blow a Kiss. There was some like dark parts in there, but it still sounded very lighthearted and sweet. And same with Perfectly Wicked. Again, like there were some bad dark parts in there, but it never felt dark. It felt actually quite sweet and quite just whimsy, maybe. I don't know what's the word.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, I think that could be part of your voice at least.
Thank you. That's interesting to hear. I did
Yeah,
not know that about
let's
myself.
see. Let's see if that continues.
Yeah. I don't think you'll think that about my YA book coming out. So that's
Okay,
interesting to hear
we
though.
can check. We can check that. And what would you say would be your biggest weakness as a writer, and like something you're working on?
I'm sure I have a lot of weaknesses as a writer. I probably have plotting weaknesses where I have to go back and restructure my plot. I have one thing I would love to work on as a romance author is building sexual tension or even just regular tension between characters. That is always something that I am striving to improve upon because there are some authors who they just slay it. They are so good at amping up every touch, every like near touch, every look, to the point where when your characters finally come together, you're like, yes. So that is something that, I'm always aware of and trying to improve in my own writing. Because, like you said, when you read a book that you love and you're like, what did they do that made me want to read this book and not put it down until 3 o'clock in the morning? And I know I'm going to regret it tomorrow because I'm going to be exhausted, but I just couldn't. And so, like, kind of trying to tease out what made that book so consumable. So that's something that I'm always trying to work on for sure. And I'm sure I have other weaknesses that people would be more than happy to tell me about, but those are a couple.
That's interesting to hear. I'm just often forget to ask this question, and that's a pity because it's very interesting to hear what the authors consider their own weaknesses. Maybe the readers don't think like that at all, you know?
Right. You never know.
Exactly. Well, okay, in that case, let's talk about writing advice. I always ask what would be the worst writing advice you've heard and or the best, whichever you want to talk about or both.
I think the best writing advice I've heard is the writing advice that I've taken to heart, and that is to just allow yourself to be messy. For me, again, that's like the only way I've been able to push on and to get stuff out there. I think that sometimes I will see a piece of writing advice that sticks with me and makes a difference. One of them that I will notice and take out in revisions is I see him walking to me, or I hear the door open. And so those senses, I'll take out the hear and the see. And so instead, the door creaked. Or, some like instead of saying see, hear, taste, or whatever, like, like simple things like that that you can read probably in any like writing craft book. I'll work on taking those out. I think the worst advice, and I don't know, it's because different things work for everyone. I'm not sure if there is bad advice. I think that whatever works for, I think just so many different things work for different authors. I like adverbs. So whenever, if he said slowly or something, people will be like, no, take it out. Just he said. But like, no, I like those. As long as not like every word, like every dialogue tag ends with that. But sprinkle some in, sure, I love it. So, there are some rules that I think should be broken.
Do you
I
get
don't know. What
scolded?
do you think?
Do you get scolded by your editor for those?
Not for those, no. I will say, like, when I am revising, I'm very particular about, I will reread the same paragraph probably like 30 times until I get it to flow exactly how I want it to flow in my head. That's part of my revision process in the, second or third or fourth time going through it. And so like a lot of times I'll catch if like I'm saying stuff too much or I have too much echo, like, you accidentally put the same word like 3 or 4 times because that's how your brain works. And I'm like, I got to take those out. I can't say I've ever had an editor tell me I use too many adverbs though. So that's good.
That means you're not using too many. So you're
Hopefully not.
using it well. If you could, what advice would you give yourself when you were just starting out?
So I would tell myself to get a community. I would probably, the reason I never got beta readers or critique partners was because I felt too insecure, I think, to really share my work. And so I think finding, other people reading your work would be really helpful. I would tell myself to get over it and, go out there and try to make those connections. I'm like an extreme introvert. And then the other thing I would tell myself is to be patient because in my case anyway, I had to be patient. Patience and persistence because I could have given up earlier, and sometimes I thought about it, right? Like when you get
Mhm.
rejected and rejected and rejected, you're like, what am I even doing? Wasting every free moment I have writing and it's doing nothing. So persistence, to be persistent, that would be my best advice. Was that even your question? I'm sorry. I feel like I went off the rails. Was that your
The
question?
question
Advice?
was the advice for
Okay.
yourself. So
For
yes.
myself. Yeah. Just continue to be persistent, I guess.
Yeah, but you did stay persistent. What kept you going actually?
I think it's just my personality. Like, I think I'm just stubbornly persistent. And I must have had some, I think that's a multi-layered like answer. There's a part of me I think that always is going to write, even if publishers stop buying my books, even if I couldn't publish because I just enjoy telling myself stories. And so there was always that desire in me to continue writing, regardless of if people wanted to read it or not. And then there must have been a part of me that believed that I could do it, right? Because if I truly felt like it wasn't going to happen, I think I might have given up. But
Mhm.
I just held out hope, and I'm stubborn, so
Did you
yeah.
have
I
a
would
like a
go ahead.
plan B? Like if I don't write, like I will do something else.
No, I mean, like I was a teacher at the time, and so like you always have like your day job, but for like creative fulfillment, I didn't have a backup plan. I can't draw. I'm like the worst drawer. Like I didn't have a desire to paint. So, or any of the other creative pursuits, it really was my one desire.
Wow.
So,
That's amazing. Like really, it's amazing. I just got this kind of desire maybe a year ago only. Before that, I do have a full-time job and everything, but I never felt like it was something that is my passion. And then I felt like there was no passion. I had no passion whatsoever. I thought I was not creative at all because I also cannot draw. Not even like I was always joking that the only thing I can do with my hands is type. That's it. And that was referring to my job, not to writing. Now it still stands, but now it's for writing as well.
Yeah, that's great. And like to experiment and try different things. And yeah, and I think some people get really lucky in that their day job is also their passion. I really enjoyed teaching. But like I would say my passion was writing,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
reading. I love to read.
Of course, don't we all?
I know
Uh,
it's like the only way to escape sometimes, I'm telling you.
yes, exactly. Well, at this point, I usually ask about recommendations. Like, I don't know, anything you use to improve your craft or just like about writing, any podcast, YouTube channels, books, anything that you could recommend for people who are writing.
I do have a book of, I think it was On Writing by Stephen King. It was like part memoir, part writing advice. I don't
Hmm.
know if you've read that book.
I haven't
I
read,
read
but I've
that.
heard a lot of it. Yeah, about it.
Okay, yeah, I did read that some years ago, and I have also heard highly recommended. I'm sure you've heard this too, but Save the Cat. Is
Hmm.
that what it is?
Yeah.
Well, yes, lots and lots and lots and lots of people recommend that. And then also that other author, Lucy Eden, she has self-published, I think, 10 books, and then this is her first traditionally published book coming out. But when I was sitting next to her, she was talking about all kinds of amazing resources, and I think she herself puts out some resources, so she might be someone to look up for other folks. For information and advice on different. There's also like a Pixar craft book that I thought was interesting.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, like like Pixar movies, how you watch them and you're just like heart melting, crying, laughing.
Hmm.
Like I
Yeah.
think of what's that one with all the feelings? In,
Inside
inside,
Out. Yeah,
inside
Inside
out.
Out.
Yeah, I think I cry every time I watch that movie. So like, um, the structure of how to reel in their viewers and how that applies to authors. I love going to conferences now. There's a historical romance group that has a conference, and they had like a whole seminar about how Marvel movies work.
Mm.
I think this is like back in the Endgame days or whatever. So there's like I think a lot of like fun parallels between TV shows and TV writing and how to structure a book because
Hmm.
they're invoking all of that emotion and you really need to grab the viewer and things like that. So I think those are fun ways to look at. Oh, and there's sorry, I just keep going.
Yeah, yeah, of
I think
course. Go,
there's
go.
one is I have not read this book, so I can't, like personally recommend it, but I've heard a ton about something called Romance the Beats, I think.
Yes. Romance the Beat is by far the most popular recommendation on this podcast. A lot of people are using it. I've read it.
Did you like
It's
it?
good. Yeah, it's, I think if you're a beginner in romance, it's very good because even if you read a lot, it will point out the patterns in the books that you should recognize.
Okay.
Yeah, so it will help kind of process romance better, but if you just follow it, I think it's a bit formulaic. You just need to kind of go and work outside the box a little bit, but the
Right.
the main points are there. Yes.
I think it would be useful for plotting, I would think,
Yes.
which again makes, and that's the problem with some craft books. If you are not a plotter, it's like a lot of them tell you, like you kind of use their advice as you're plotting. And, like I think, like I've never read Romance the Beat because I don't plot, and I
Mhm.
think that would be, but it would probably be worth reading anyway.
It's very short. Like it maybe will take you an hour to read. It's super
Oh,
fast, and yeah, it's super short. And I think it's sometimes useful to remind yourself that the conflict that you have in the book has to be about the romance. It has to be internal, and it has to be about the romance. Sometimes you read and you feel like yes, the relationship is there, but the conflict is all external, and so you don't really understand why the relationship is there at all, because if it's a romance, it's supposed to be about the romance. And there in Romancing the Beat, it just kind of reminds you that at this point your characters have to experience reservations about the relationship, because whatever their reason is, it cannot just progress linearly. You have to go two steps back at this point.
right. Yeah. And you made me think of I went to a romance writers conference. Yale hosted it a couple years ago, and Sarah McLean was there. And she did say something that stuck with me. She said, you should pause your writing and when you're writing romance and ask yourself, why can't they be together right now? And if you don't have a good reason, you need to give them a good reason. And so once in a while when I'm writing, I'll stop and I'll say, like, wait, why can't they be together right now? And if it doesn't feel like a good enough reason, you have to insert more conflict. And I thought that was a great piece of advice.
Yes, yeah, that sounds like a great advice because I think in in the conversation of like third act breakup. By the way, do you always like follow that there should be a breakup in the third act thing?
I don't. So there is one in Never Blow a Kiss. There's like a natural separation in Perfectly Wicked. In Never Gamble Your Heart, there is not a third act breakup. So I personally don't ascribe to the idea that you have to have a third act breakup, because sometimes as a reader, I don't want a third act breakup. Sometimes it stresses me out. And I'm, and especially, so personally, I don't like it when they stretch on and on for a large section of the book, because it brings me too much angst.
Hmm.
So, like, when in my third act breakups, I do try to have it resolve maybe a little bit quickly, because I do find it stressful. But some people are like fully believe that there should be a third act breakup in every book. So, you know,
Yeah, yeah. That's it's just that I do think I'm okay with third act breakups totally, even if they're miscommunication, as long as it's connected to the like the previous conflict that the characters had, it's perfectly fine with me. I find sometimes that not having a third act breakup and having an external like kidnapping or something like that instead of it is well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends, right?
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know why I went on a tangent about third act breakups, but
No, it's a good question. I was actually asked it recently too. Like, it's an interesting, people have a lot of thoughts and feelings about it.
okay. Well, thanks a lot for joining me today. As the last thing, I just wanted to ask, how can my listeners find you online? Where to find your books, your handles, things like that.
Yeah, thank you. I am I have a website, lindsaylovise.com, and I have a newsletter, which I'm not very good at sending out. But if people sign up for it, they can read the deleted prologue for Never Blow a Kiss. I
Oh,
never even sent it to my editor. I cut it before we even sent it to her. So there's that. And also, I always send out a newsletter with my new covers before I post them on socials. So that's another benefit of signing up for Lovis letters. And as for social media, I am mostly on Instagram. Like, I have handles across, I think, most social media platforms. And in the bio, and most of them, it says, I'm not actually here. Go see me on Instagram. So that's where I am most active, is on Instagram. And then my handle on Instagram is at Lindsay Lovis.
all right. I'm gonna put this all in the episode description. And your book comes out tomorrow. Well, tomorrow, which is the 4th of February, right?
Yes, yes.
If I manage to release the episode on the 3rd of February, then your book comes out tomorrow. Congratulations. What's the name and how people can buy it?
Sure. It's called Never Gamble Your Heart, and it's the second book in the Secret Society of Governess Spies. This one is about Frankie, who is a governess, but also a brilliant mathematician, and Jasper Jones, who runs a gambling hell. And he was inspired by a real life man at the time who started out as a fishmonger's son and built up the most exclusive gambling hell the town had seen. And so you can buy that anywhere books are sold. It should be in most bookstores, I believe, ebook and audiobook. And I believe the audiobook is going to be narrated by Ella Lynch and Rupert Channing again, like Never
Yay!
Kiss. Yeah, I think they're incredible. So
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
really excited for that.
Yeah, I got an arc of the audio and I was listening and then NetGalley archived it and cut my
I didn't know that could
access.
happen.
Well, yeah, with audios that happen. With the ebooks, you can just save it on Kindle and it's not going to disappear. But with the
Right.
audio, they only allow me to have it on the NetGalley app, and when it's archived, it's gone from there. I
Oh.
thought I wouldn't finish the book. I was so upset. Well, I mean, I bought it eventually, but I think I also found an e-arc as well to read. Well, so yes, everybody go buy the book. Go buy the first one as well. It was amazing, and I'm gonna be hopefully reading the arc of Never Gamble Your Heart.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining. I had so much fun talking to you. I There was a lot of surprising answers that
Oh,
I
really?
I didn't. Well, yeah, I told you I thought you were a plotter. I thought I knew you. I was just like the conversation would be breezy, but thank you so much.
Thank
My
you so much
listeners
for having
will,
me.
yeah, my listeners will learn so much, and I wish you the best with your next releases. And I'll keep reading your books. And have a good day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye. If you like what you hear so far, please consider subscribing and tune in for the next episode. If you have burning questions about writing you'd like to have answered, head to my Instagram page at kkalbabooks and leave me a message. Or use my email k.k.alba.books@gmail.com. If you'd like your favorite author to answer your question on my show, again, head to my Instagram or email me to let me know which author you'd like me to invite, and I'll try to get over my anxiety and do it. On the other hand, if you're an author who's published at least one book, traditional or indie, and you'd like to become a guest, well, you know what to do by now. Message me and let's get to know each other.